So yeah, thanks everyone for joining us on the for the presentation today. We'll be essentially chatting to you about how a community-driven, crowdsourced solution towards IoT cybersecurity has a place in current society. So first of all, does anybody here fall into any of these categories that you can see on the screen? Okay, that's good. We're in the right room then. That's fine. Okay, so you guys are the experts in the room. There's a lot of snake oil and buzzwords relating to IoT at the moment, so we'll try and avoid a lot of that in the talk today.
So, as Ty said, we are IoT, and we're providing a community-driven cybersecurity solution towards the Internet of Things. And this is our first B-Sides event. And B-Sides is great because it brings together an industry which is notoriously siloed in the way that we work. So by bringing together a community of like-minded individuals, hobbyists, professionals, we couldn't be more excited to be here today. So these two handsome chaps make up part of the IoT team. I'm Kieran, the commercial guy and resident BFG. And then we've got Tyrone, who's the product guy and ping pong connoisseur. We also have a few of our tech guys in the audience today. So if you want to chat tech with those guys afterwards, feel free.
Okay, so you'll be aware that IoT has become a bit of a buzzword lately, past decade or so. I guess the definition that we're going to follow to describe IoT would be any internet-connected device that is not a laptop or a smartphone. Now, these devices are everywhere. An example, autonomous connected vehicles. Who in the audience has one of these? Ooh, not the turnout I was expecting, but that's for a cybersecurity lot, but that's fine. But you guys know, like, these things were once something for the expected in the future. They're very much here and here to stay. More example of IoT devices, medical devices again. Smart pacemakers, smart insulin pumps, home medical devices, just a few. And COVID has really exacerbated this, as we know. Manufacturing and utilities. Now, smart manufacturing, connected robots, conveyor belts. Also, utilities industry is going through rapid digital transformation at the moment. It's prime time for IoT in all of these industries. And really, we're just hitting the tip of the iceberg.
22 billion IoT devices in circulation across the world, with an expected rise to 40 billion by 2025. It's a crazy number. The number's nearly going to double in the time over the next 3 years that what we've already seen for IoT. It's a booming industry and is fundamentally changing the way that the world works. Now, the benefits are countless, but here, for the purposes of the presentation, we've counted 3. So first of all, you've got connectivity and innovation. With the world being more connected than ever before, it's rapidly accelerating the pace at which companies are able to innovate. Secondly, you've got sustainability. Now, there's all sorts of variables which underpin sustainability, but in IoT particularly, you've got smart environmental sensors, smart agriculture, smart waste management, and these are all examples of how IoT is improving sustainability across the world. And then lastly, quality of life. Fundamentally, the introduction of IoT has improved the lives of so many people across the world. However,
it is not all sunshines and rainbows, as you see. Obviously, IoT is fantastic. It spurs innovation. However, what has also surged are the risks associated with these devices, and especially due to the increase of attack services associated with them. So why does IoT present such a risk to cybersecurity? Well, we can split these into 3 main categories. So the first, insecure IoT devices. Now, there are a lot of devices on the market that are being made in places that don't really prioritize the safety of the devices. They don't go through the regular due diligence, and therefore they really create them to maximize profits. And as a result, easy for malicious actors to really exploit.
And just as a quick on top of that story, so we, for a bit of context, work at a tech accelerator. And we checked with our IT manager a few months back if we could mess about with the cameras just to see how much data and what we could actually do with them. I have no technical expertise. I've never written a line of code in my life, but I happen to find myself in cybersecurity. But what I did do is take it upon myself to learn some of those skills. So I loaded up Nmap scripting engine. Now, a lot of you guys in the room will be aware that that is not realistically a high-level skilled cybersecurity action. But what I was able to do was load a few scripts onto the office cameras and actually get inside them. And that took me about a half hour. And as I said, no technical expertise. It wasn't exactly very difficult to do.
Exactly. And I guess another problem in the space are a deficit of IoT security professionals. Now, you'll be well aware these guys typically get tasked to look into a device, formulate a report, and then report that with vulnerabilities back to whatever vendor manufacturer has asked them to conduct that security audit. Now, this simply isn't enough for these professionals. And as a result, it means that there are essentially too many devices to keep up with the amount of these people at the moment, and that amount is only going to increase in the future. And there's also fragmented device information. Now, all of this information, from basic device information to vulnerability information, it's all out there, but it's all scattered across different databases. Essentially, it takes a lot of time to find this. But what it seems to be very easy to find is, a list of default passwords that users are able to access these devices. That seems to be the only thing that isn't really fragmented in the industry. But yeah.
So where have some of these attacks already happened? Well, there's a couple of famous examples. First one, the thermostat casino hack. This is where essentially a bunch of attackers in an unnamed casino in Las Vegas managed to get 10 terabytes of data from a smart thermostat on the side of a fish tank. Now, that's pretty scary stuff when you think that it's just a thermostat on the side of a fish tank. And then secondly, you've got smart speakers listening to you. Now, it's no secret that these speakers are listening, and I guess how many times have you actually heard your smart speaker say something to you, even though you've not said her name? Well, that's because these devices are always listening to you. And just like any web interface, these speakers collect data through their apps, so you'd be fooled to think if they're only listening to you when you want them to. In fact, police in the USA are now actively trying to get hold of Alexa audio files to help solve domestic violence disputes. It's a real concern for the future of our privacy. So who's trying to solve it? Well, everyone. But how many times have you seen something like this? These are the new buzzwords in cybersecurity at the moment, as well as Internet of Things, but I don't actually think they mean anything. If you happen to disagree with me, by all means pull me after this talk and we'll have a chat about it. But as I said, new buzzwords in cyber, it's absolutely everywhere.
So yeah, to really get a grand understanding of, the main problems in the area, let's go ahead and dig a little bit deeper to see what you can find. So obviously, insecure devices, this new cool IoT robot, whatever it is, may look cool, probably does some good stuff, but is it safe? Practically no. For example, do you really need a toaster that connects to your phone? Is it really necessary to have a Wi-Fi operated air conditioning unit? Again, the short answer is no. Default passwords also. We've already briefly touched upon this, but these devices can be shipped with default usernames, default passwords. Simple as a username being username, password being password. You get the idea. Not really the safest thing in the world. And finally, cheap manufacturing. As mentioned, security isn't really being considered in these manufacturing places, and therefore they're getting shipped not only by consumers and adopted amongst consumer industry, but also across CNI firms. It really can be quite devastating.
So the second one is the deficit of security professionals. Now, this is an absolutely huge one because it's hitting every single person in every single industry. There's simply not enough people to go around. IoT doomsday is just around the corner, and the market currently has little response ready for it. And then finally, fragmented device information. We've already touched upon this again briefly, but the information is essentially scattered all over the internet. So if you want to conduct a thorough security audit, you have to trawl through hundreds and hundreds of Google searches just to find the most basic device information. Now, this can be stuff like hardware, software, and firmware. I'm not talking anything super complex. So ultimately, it's a massive time inefficiency, and it doesn't really need to be this way. The industry has kind of brought the problem on itself by always kind of operating independently and not always fostering collaboration and information sharing across the industry. But the one thing that the industry does fail to recognize is that its biggest asset is already here.
And that asset is in the community. Now, we all have a role to play. Every single one of us could be sitting on information that could really help the IoT cybersecurity landscape. Know the software version of your smart TV? Then share it. Know the subcomponents in your door sensor? Share it. Know the security vulnerabilities associated with that IP camera? Share it. This is all important knowledge. However, there seems to be one underlying blocker. That professionals seem to work in siloed workflows. So what do I mean by this? Well, IoT security experts seem to work independently of each other. They don't tend to collaborate on projects unless opportunities like B-sides present themselves. Businesses do have their own internal ways of communicating and sharing data amongst each other. However, that simply doesn't seem to transcend over to the general community. Obviously, there's examples such as, vigilante groups. But if we could really carry that ethos to the general community, it'd really go a long way.
So how do we do it? Well, it's quite simple, really. Crowdsourcing. Crowdsourcing has proven over the past 10 to 15 years that it can be an extremely efficient way to fill knowledge gaps. Not only that, but by taking part, users actually feel as though they're contributing towards something for the greater good. So by creating a huge information sharing knowledge bank among the community, people can actually have access to information they otherwise wouldn't have. And ultimately, it improves the participation and the knowledge of the wider network of users. And does it work? Well, the short answer is yes. Stack Overflow has demonstrated that a crowdsourced, community-driven approach to filling technical knowledge gaps actually works. What if there was something like this for cybersecurity and IoT? A place to share information with your peers with the goal of improving the broader space of IoT and cybersecurity. Hands up here, anybody who's actually used Stack Overflow? Now keep your hands up if you'd be stuffed without it.
Yeah, exactly, and that's because it works. Before Stack, programmers would have to go through heavy documentations just to find a simple fix for the simple problem. Imagine having to trawl through hours of documentation to find something that should have just taken you 5 minutes. It sounds pretty tedious, right? As well as that, for the programmers who prefer a more rogue approach, lots and lots of trial and error is needed. It was a huge inefficiency in the way that the industry operated, and we can definitely see parallels between then and IoT at the moment. So on the left, we have pre-Stack Overflow. The problems which we've mentioned, obviously due to the lack of collaboration, because Stack simply didn't exist. And to the right, we have the current state of IoT at the moment, where hundreds of Google searches just to find basic device information is kind of the new heavy documentation that plagues the industry at the moment. Quite simply, because Stack Overflow didn't exist, there was a lack of collaboration, and this is again because we tend to, at the moment, work in siloed workflows. Finally, a huge problem that is often overlooked is the idea of repetitive work. Now, I could be a security researcher based in Brazil that is looking into the latest Amazon Echo. I'm completely unaware that Kieran is looking into the exact same device in a different country. But because there's no real formal way of bringing us together, it means that there is a lot of inefficiencies there. However, Stack Overflow has mitigated the problem of uncaptured information by giving programmers the platform to crowdsource and collaborate together. So we must ask ourselves, why can't we as an industry do the same thing?
Now stick with me here. Food and IoT are actually very similar. Now, of course, I'm not suggesting you start microwaving your smart devices. That will cause one hell of an accident. What I am referring to is the basic information that gets printed on the back of a packet. If you imagine 30 years ago, to find out the nutritional content of the food you'd eat, you'd have to send it off to a lab to be analysed. You get a report back 6 weeks later. By then, you don't care because you've digested it and it's now irrelevant. Well, that's the current state of IoT at the moment. If you want an IoT device audited, you have to send it off, get a report back, and by then you've probably already put it into your infrastructure, so you don't really care anymore. If the industry can share all of the basic stuff they know about an IoT device and share it with the community, we can ultimately improve the industry more broadly. But what basic stuff do we actually mean? And I mean the basics of basics here. So software, firmware, hardware. The industry doesn't need the next Mr. Robot to share vulnerabilities, write binary code, or micro-segment devices. What the industry needs is hardware, software, and firmware information. By having a combination of all of these things, experts like you guys can extrapolate the security of the device relatively easily. Hobbyists, researchers, students, and many more are all sat on top of valuable information that can provide value to the industry, and they don't even know it.
And the community does have all of this. If the cybersecurity community can crowdsource all the basic information and package it in a way that helps the community to learn and develop, the industry can actively help to solve some really cool problems. How to collaborate, how to fix IoT, and how to get more people involved in cyber can all be solved with a community-driven and crowdsourced approach. And crowdsourcing has been attempted by some companies. However, this crowdsourcing typically comes from the elite vetted individuals who are essentially offering a service rather than a community. Additionally, all of this crowdsourced information goes back into other siloed databases, therefore inherently away from the community. To make it work, the industry must foster collaboration and inclusion to a crowdsourced approach.
So that means no more siloed databases and working habits. Instead, the community can help to foster more collaboration across the industry and build an inclusive ethos among individuals who choose to take part. But if you're currently there thinking, yeah, great, but what's in it for me? Then let me enlighten you. First of all, you get to build your network. By utilizing crowdsourced information, people are actively becoming more informed based on the information that you're giving them. This gives you the opportunity to influence and therefore build your network with like-minded people. Secondly, you can change the industry through collaboration. Become pioneers in the way that the industry operates. By advocating for crowdsourcing early on, you're actively improving the industry, all while collaborating with your peers at the same time. And then finally, build a portfolio. By contributing your knowledge and demonstrating exactly how much you know about IoT and cybersecurity, you never know who's going to be looking at your skill set.
So, how do we build trust in a community that is inherently distrusting? Well, crowdsourcing is notorious for producing misinformation, yet platforms that have placed trust in the community to verify this information have always been the ones to succeed. And what is the similarity between them all? Peer review. Now, by the community vetting each other's knowledge, there is minimal risk or misinformation being spread as everyone is working together for the common good. What does peer review mean? Well, fundamentally, to put the trust in the hands of the community. Through community members verifying whether knowledge is correct or not creates a collaborative ecosystem. It also means the community can help to fill where knowledge gaps exist.
To see change in the industry, there has to be an element of influence from all stakeholders involved. However, we fundamentally believe that the community has to be the one to drive the change. IoT security needs you because the future of our industry depends on it. Now, we have a lot of great ideas on how the cybersecurity can influence change. But what we really want to hear is from the community firsthand and what you're doing out there. So please get in touch to talk all things cyber, IoT, and what's going on over at our IoT base. And finally, if there's one thing to take away from this talk, it's this. Let's collectively collaborate to make IoT safer, with community and crowdsourcing being at the heart of it all. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Yes.
So we've got CD uptime. People get CD. So that's why it's cyber effects. They speak about it. Also, one of the things that we have mentioned, especially malware and stuff like that, Twitter. But some obviously saying it's that risk of that. They send out they're getting together. But Twitter is fantastic, especially for security.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think one thing we've really noticed over the past few months or so is that Twitter's taken off in the security space. I think more than ever. I'm not sure why that is, why the trend seems to be that way, but yeah, I couldn't agree more. Twitter is very much a collaborative space for the security industry. But aside from that, I think the way we see it is that the industry is very much still kind of siloed in the way it works. People want to work together if they're trying to achieve a common goal, but aside from that, they won't share information. And I think Twitter's a good example of that. For example, you mentioned that vulnerabilities and malware, etc., get published on Twitter, and that's great if they're trying to get company attention. However, if you're trying to build essentially a team or collaborate in any way, shape, or form. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I think why Twitter's also good is because it puts a lot of pressure on the vendors as well. People, the manufacturers, they see, oh my God, there's a huge buzz on Twitter. Everyone's talking about this vulnerability in my device. Should probably do something about it. That's something that we want to tap into, and we want to carry that sort of ethos beyond Twitter as well. You said that they get together and they take it offline. Well, if we could help them take it to a different platform, but then also have other people join into that, we think it could cause a real buzz there as well. Yeah, another question. Yeah, awesome. I'm happy to take the first bit. So we mentioned in the presentation, peer review is going to be important. For our platform, we see obviously an opportunity for people of the community to be able to contribute information, and also to do that, we should create a space that allows the community to also verify the information that other security professionals put on that platform. So you're not only verifying the information that someone contributes, but you're also directly verifying their profile. So let's say that if we follow like a traffic light system, where each profile is representative of, let's say, if it's a green, then that suggests that security professional elects information, and that information is rigorous. You can trust it. There's integrity there. Someone who's amber, which suggests, okay, if that person has contributed information, then you need to take it with caution, but you'd be able to also see the portfolio to back that up as well. Red as well, which I guess a lot of these people responsible for the Mirai attacks would fall into, would suggest that, okay, if that person's on the platform, then maybe the information that they put on there shouldn't be held in the same regard as a green person. And then it would also be important if there was like some sort of flagging mechanism. So if there are these red people, then other security professionals are able to flag that, and that would then report it, and then there would have to be some sort of process to minimize the input that individual has.
And just on the point about responsible disclosure, for us, the way we see it is that it doesn't necessarily have to be 0 days that are being reported in a collaborative ecosystem. It just has to be the basic stuff about a device or cybersecurity more broadly, so that the people on the other end can make a more informed decision. Whereas at the moment, all of this stuff is going completely uncaptured because the community is sitting on all of it. They just don't even realize it and have nowhere to share it. So it's not necessarily about sharing 0 days and creating new ones. It's more about kind of making everybody more informed by creating this collaborative ecosystem. Any more questions?
Well,
cool. Thank you.
Yeah, and if anyone's obviously we're going to be around anyway, so if anyone can think of anything later, then feel free to pull us. We're very, very open, engaging people. So yeah, cheers everyone.